But it's a challenge that we are aware of, but it's again on the bigger picture, the scale here between having a lot of civilians killed and maybe or allowing Hamas, a few Hamas to slip through or to make it more difficult for us to catch them. Our priorities are to fight Hamas and to have less civilian casualties. It's not an easy one, but that is our priority.
No doubt. Can you say if you're able to, I mean, if the IDF is going to sort of isolate neighborhood by neighborhood and sort of filter evacuees through, is that going to be the process here? Thank you.
Yeah, we will definitely be high resolution and detail oriented. Our intention is to bring our military advantages to the fore and to apply them against Hamas, and to do so while minimizing the effect on civilians. And in order to do so, we have to get civilians out of the way to relative safety in the humanitarian zone in the Muasi area. That is what we intend to do, and hopefully we will have the cooperation of humanitarian organizations in Gaza in doing so. Organizations that are mandated to help protect and provide humanitarian assistance to civilians there. Last chance for Bradley. Should we say third time lucky? If not, next person will be Ahmed Maher. Um, So
Should
Bradley still no. Okay, Ahmed, please go ahead.
Hi, Jonathan. Thanks for this opportunity and thanks for your time.
Thank
Do
you.
you think that eventually the Palestinians or Palestinian militants actually will demolish the fence between Gaza Strip and Egypt, as what happened in 2008? If you remember, tens of thousands of Palestinians managed to get into Egypt, even briefly, before they returned. Do you think this is a likely scenario? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your question, Ahmed. I think it is a scenario, and I think that there is a certain level of likelihood that it will happen. It is not something that Israel is involved in, of course. That's a matter between Hamas and the Egyptian authorities. We know that there's a very delicate situation on the ground. We know that there is tremendous pressure in the south. And we see the positive role that Egypt has in facilitating humanitarian aid and also negotiations with Hamas and the Qataris and the US in order to bring repatriate hostages. So hopefully any tension on the ground can be resolved peacefully, but there is always the chance of those things happening. Hopefully, they will be resolved without violence and for the benefit of Palestinian civilians, and of course, out of respect for Egyptian sovereignty. Yeah, Emre, please.
Hi, Jonathan. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Since you've been conducting a ground operation, I'm sure that you found many evidences that Hamas receive support from other countries. At the beginning of this conflict, you claim that the Hamas received military aid and support from Iran or other countries. I was wondering if you find any concrete evidence from all those computers, all those weapons that ties to Hamas military operations to Iran or other countries in the region. I'm not talking about the political support. And the second question is that Turkish president have been claiming that the Israeli IDF has been committing war crime, and Turkey has been preparing files to bring the so-called war crimes into the attention of ICC. I was wondering, do you have any response to this thing? Thank you.
Yeah. So for us, long before October the 7th massacre, in Israel long before Hamas invaded and killed Israeli civilians and raped and maimed and took hostages. For us, it was very clear that a sizable part, and this is based on intelligence, documents, intercepts, visual intelligence, signals intelligence, and it's also based on statements made by Yahya Sinwar and by many other seniors in Hamas, Khaled Mashal, and many others, who say very clearly on record that they thank the brothers in Iran for providing weapons and money and equipment and knowledge. Some of them even go as far as saying that all of our weapons are from our brothers in Iran. I'm not entirely sure that is correct, but it's very clear based on intelligence and statements that a sizable part of their weapons come from Iran. Many of the weapons that we confiscated, that Hamas terrorists from the Nukhba unit brought with them on October the 7th, when we killed the terrorists, we took their weapons, and a lot of the weapons that they brought with them were made in Iran. There's also weapons from other countries. Some are Iranian copies of weapons that are made in Europe and in Russia. For instance, the Sayad sniper rifle, which is a copy of a Austrian Steyr rifle. And then there's Italian mines and Iranian copies of the Italian mines. Then there are thermobaric charges, some of them produced in Iran, and many other examples of the equipment, also RPGs that were manufactured there. So there's ample evidence to that.
Any Turkish products did you find?
Not that I'm aware. No, not that I'm aware of. At the just without checking any references, no, I did not see. And regarding your second question, I think that's very rich for Turkey to be accusing Israel of anything like the things that they are allegedly accusing. I think it's preposterous, and I don't think that is really worthy of a comment. We fight according to the law of armed conflict. And I'm not going to go into politics with the Turks, but I think that they are on a very, very negative path regionally, aligning themselves with the worst bedfellows in the region, with the Iranians and with terrorist organizations. And I don't think that they are in a position to lecture Israel about anything, frankly.
Thank you.
Sphinx, please.
Hi, Lieutenant Colonel. It's nice to have you back. Although
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me? Hello. Can you hear me?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So I was going to say it's nice to have you back. So Israel today, I'm not sure if it was you, but CNN reported today that Israel believes that Hamas still has 17 women and children remaining, and that they can release under the terms of this agreement. Hamas claiming that they don't have those numbers. I have a couple questions about that. One is the IDF counting the Bibas family, the mother and two sons, among those 17? And what makes you think that there are 17 women and children remaining? And what incentive would Hamas have in lying about this? And if there's time, I can ask one more question. Thank you.
Okay, I don't know. Can you hear me now?
Now I can.
Okay, sorry, some technical issue here. Anyhow, what we assess is that yes, the Bibas family are definitely part of those 17 women and children, that, according to our information, are still held by Hamas in Gaza. And I don't know what their considerations are. I don't know why Hamas refused to hand over the remaining women and children, which they committed to doing. I'll remind everybody that the initial agreement was 4 days, 50 people total, 50 hostages, and then there were options for at least 10 live Israelis each day for every day of quiet, at the total of 10 days possible. And they fell short. I don't know why, and we didn't get any real explanation. We got rockets, and only 9 hostages were released on the last day, and then they started firing rockets. Of course, I wish that wouldn't have been the case, but this is where we are now, we find ourselves. I hope that answers
Thank
the
you.
question.
Yes, it does. And just one final one. Hersh Goldberg, Poland, and several others, unknown the number of other people in a similar condition to him, which is those who sustained injuries that, if untreated, on October 7th, that if untreated could lead to loss of life. Do we know anything about Hirsch's or any others, or the numbers of others who are possibly in that category, whether it's men or others, and what the status is, and are we getting more cooperation from the Red Cross in getting their status? And thank you so much.
Thank you. No, sadly, we're not getting any access of Red Cross to our hostages, which is very, very unfortunate and regrettable. That is something that our Prime Minister requested, demanded. That is something that we have continuously asked to happen. That is what the Red Cross is supposed to be doing in any conflict. And it's very regrettable that that has not yet happened. We, of course, are happy for the efforts that the Red Cross is making to get our hostages out by providing the transport from Hamas to Egypt and then to Israel. That is good. But much more needs to be done. And under the Geneva Convention and the mandate of the Red Cross, they should be able to go to any hostage or prisoner of war or any person that is being held by a side to a conflict, and to make sure that they're all right, that they get their medical treatment and religious rights, and of course are held in humane conditions, none of which are happening with Hamas, according to the testimonies of other hostages that have come out. So that is the sad situation, and unfortunately, we have seen examples, again based on Hamas propaganda videos, of Israeli hostages that died in captivity. An elderly gentleman, Zalman Zalmanovich, they issued a video of him dead. First, he was on some kind of connected to some kind of medical equipment, and then the next frames was him appearing dead, and he has now been declared dead also in Israel. An elderly gentleman who suffered from pre-existing conditions. So we can assume, sadly, that Hamas is not providing adequate medical aid to the hostages, and this has been quite apparent with many of the hostages that have returned as well. Sina, please.
Thank you, Colonel. Shabbat Shalom. I have a
Thank
quick.
you.
There's been about, give or take, 10,000 to 12,000 and ongoing rockets have been fired on Israel from Gaza by Hamas. Is there a way for the IDF to have a simulation done as to what areas or what places they would have hit had they not been for the Iron Dome or other defensive mechanism that the IDF uses, just to show intent versus intent in terms of civilian targets, and also what the IDF is doing, putting their own lives on the line, going door to door and trying to protect the civilians? It's just a question that I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Sina, and Shabbat Shalom to you as well. I think that a good idea. It would definitely, I think, shed a lot of light on what Hamas is trying to achieve. Thankfully, we have the Iron Dome, we have the David Sling and the Arrow, our three aerial defense systems. Each one of them operate at a different altitude and are tasked with different incoming threats. And thankfully, they all work excellently, and they save Israeli lives every day. And that may be a good idea to produce. So I thank you for the idea, and it's very evident. The intent, of course, is to kill Israeli civilians by firing rockets. Me, Santa? John Spencer, please go ahead.
Hi, Colonel Enriquez. It's great to see you. Great to hear from you.
Likewise.
I really wanted to comment on the graphic that the IDF produced this morning as an urban warfare researcher. Really a significant moment in history, that level of a map and a graphic to again take risk in soldiers, and that map would be used in urban warfare to coordinate the military movements, but being used to take further care to prevent civilian harm. I really commend that, and a really special moment actually in the history of going above and beyond those requirements and figuring out how to do it in the complexity of urban warfare. So my question, Jonathan, is about the underground, the tunnel complexes. Based on everything that's happened since then, is the Hamas tunnel network more than what the IDF had estimated and what intelligence had estimated? I saw something about 400 shafts, 500 entrances discovered already. Is it more or less, or still yet to see?
Yeah, thank you, John, for your remark and the question. Yes, it is exceptional that we are going to telegraph our movements ahead of time to protect civilians, enemy civilians who are non-combatants and not the enemy, but they are nevertheless on the enemy side. And we're going to do that in order to keep them safer while we are fighting their sovereign government, which doesn't care if they live or die, or perhaps even prefers that they die so that they can manipulate their death. I don't know too many other militaries who have done that in recent history. Regarding tunnels, etc., yes, the number is correct that you're referencing. We have destroyed about 500 shafts, and I think we had a good assessment of the situation before going in, and we are improving the detail and the granularity of our understanding of the challenge as we maneuver and as we operate, and we're finding ways to deal with the threat, to mitigate the threat, and to render the tunnels unusable and even how should we call them, death traps for Hamas instead of for our troops. So that it is massive. The infrastructure is massive. The amount, the scope, the depth, the level of detail, the fit and finish, for lack of a better word, but really the level of detail and quality of the tunnels. Some of them are directly rigged with solar panels, with advanced electronics, with communications, of course, air condition, ventilation, and long duration sustaining systems. Really high level of engineering in some of the tunnels that we found, especially those around hospitals, have been very high level. So we're learning as we go by, and we're exposing a lot, exposing to ourselves and learning to our troops. We haven't yet exposed much of what we've seen to the world, and there will be a time when we will do that as well. And I think that there were quite a lot of surprises for Hamas in this encounter, and I'll have to leave it kind of ambiguous because I cannot give away more than that. Go ahead, Kirk Lubimov.
Yes, thank you, Shabbat Shalom, and thank you again, and prayers with our IDF brothers and sisters, and I hope you guys stay strong and power ahead.
Thank you.
I have two questions. What's the estimate of Hamas fighters, like the number of them, do you guys have in mind? I know some figures were thrown that there's around 40,000 Hamas fighters, which, just give it as a percent of population. That's close to 2% of total Gazan population. And if you can maybe comment a little bit on the activity in the West Bank. I know Jenin has been very hot, and there's a lot of conversation that there is no Hamas or activity in the West Bank in general media and social media, but I think it's quite wrong. And if you can just put that on record and correct that. Tada.
Yes, thank you, Kirk, and Shabbat Shalom to you as well. Um, so, numbers wise, our assessment was that Hamas has about 30,000 combatants in Gaza, people with varying levels of training of military capability. These aren't the people who take out the trash or who do finance or admin, but combatants that have training to use weapons. We're working on our assessment on how many Hamas operatives we've killed during the war. I can say that there's about 1,000 Hamas operatives that were either killed or taken captive in Israel after the 7th of October, and that there are thousands, we assess that there are thousands of Hamas operatives, enemy combatants that have been killed in Gaza. I say thousands, and I don't yet have a more accurate number. I know that there have been reports out in Hebrew media saying 5,000. I, as IDF, cannot yet put that as an official number confirmed by the IDF, but we are working on analyzing various sources of intelligence in order to put a figure. It's very important to understand how many enemy combatants we've killed in order, of course, to refute the claims, the narrative that Hamas is working so hard to get out and establish around the world that there are many civilian casualties and not many enemy combatants. And I think that at the end of this war, perhaps a bit after, but towards the end and hopefully sooner, we'll be able to expose and prove that a very large amount or a large substantial percentage of those that were killed in Gaza were indeed Hamas operatives, Hamas enemy combatants, and that will really undermine many of the claims that are being circulated and propagated against Israel.
I think
About
it's
Judea and
important.
Samaria,
Sorry, just to cut you off. I think it's important just to add that by those figures that Hamas was the biggest employer in Gaza.
yes, well, it's a tight race between Hamas and UNRWA. UNRWA is a very big employer in schools and sanitation and administration and management and many other things. And Hamas is, of course, a very big. And then there's the Palestinian Authority. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but these are the three biggest ones. And regarding Judea and Samaria, Hamas has been making a lot of efforts over the years to try to um, instigate violence there and cause a third intifada and to wreak havoc and basically replicate what they did in October the 7th, on October the 7th against communities around Gaza. They're trying to get that same thing to happen in Judea and Samaria. And every night, Israel conducts counterterrorism activities in various locations, Jenin, Nablus, Tulkarem, Jericho, outskirts of Ramallah, Hebron, and many other locations where we act on intelligence generated by various sources and the ISA, Shabak. We operate together and we arrest. Up until now, since October the 7th, we have arrested about 2,800 terror related suspects, some of them while they were fighting against Israeli security forces, while they were trying to attack Israelis, and some of them before they were able to execute any attacks. Out of those 2,800, 1,100 are Hamas affiliated. And those are the official IDF and ISA numbers. Mayaba?
Those are incredible. Thank you so much for your information.
Thank you. Few troubles. Neil,
Yes, good afternoon. I would like to ask
good afternoon.
about a certain whistleblowing that came out saying that the IDF has been using an AI generated target list to maximize number of civilians killed. I wanted to know if we can disclose more information about that.
Yeah. So with any good lie, you have to use part of the truth and then distort it in order to make it look trustworthy. We have said in the past, the IDF has said clearly, like most other advanced militaries that are fighting, that we use AI in order to generate targets. This has been on record for years. I've heard senior Israeli generals say it. We've said it in the Air Force, we've said it in the Intel, that we use algorithms, we use machine learning in order to collect intelligence from visuals and from audio, and that is not new. It's not new for anybody who is in the military realm and understands military operations and counterterrorism. It may be new for people who live normal civilian lives and are not familiar.
But
And
I just wanted to know, Jonathan, because I looked at two maps side by side, the one where we can see the airstrike and the other one where we can see the Gazawi's infrastructure, which are hospitals, and they actually match almost side by side. So hospitals, churches, places of gathering. So it's just a bit weird here.
So I don't know exactly what you're referring to in terms of the fact that Hamas, they use hospitals, schools, mosques, ambulances, all of these UN facilities. They use all of them, either the protection or they use the inside of those facilities in order to fight against us. And we have issued lots of videos from this conflict only of bombs that are prepared and fired from mosques in northern Gaza, of tunnels underneath the Shifa hospital, of armed Hamas personnel inside the Shifa hospitals, of weapons inside the Shifa hospital, of armed Hamas operatives firing from at the IDF from the Qatari hospital and from the Indonesian hospital, as an example. With anything, I'm not an expert in AI at all or machine learning, but in anything that is generated by a machine, there's always a human in the loop that has a definitive and executive say over whatever is generated by a machine. And there's always people who make decisions and, of course, are accountable for their decisions and make them according to the best available intelligence that they have. But to indicate that we use AI in order to maximize civilian casualties is categorically false. We use AI to be more effective, to be more efficient, and to strike the enemy faster and better, and also to strike the targets that need to be struck and not those that do not need to be struck. We use AI to do that as well.
Your spokesperson said we are focusing on creating damage, not on precision. One of your spokespersons. So it just it's you see it's a bit difficult, Jonathan, for people outside of the conflict to look at these operations and maneuvers as being really strictly aimed at your targets, which are in this case Hamas.
Yeah,
It's
I understand that. He said that was an off answer to one question. I think it was on the 8th of October, a long time ago. 8th of October, he was asked a question. Since then, I think he's been asked, I don't know, 100,000 questions. So have I. And that was part of a question which didn't even have, wasn't even related to anything targeting, etc. It was related to something else and has since been taken out of context and been used and amplified by the pro-Hamas or the anti-Israel camp. I can say categorically, and the same spokesperson, Rear Admiral Hagari, has said many times that Hamas is the enemy, not the civilian population, that we target the Hamas combatants and their infrastructure, that we fight according to the laws of armed conflict, and many other things repeatedly, and we have also shown it on the ground. And it's, I think, sad, regrettable, and a bit dishonest of those in the media who choose cherry pick one half statement, which was an answer to a question not related to the topic, and choose to use that as something that indicates something else. I think that's a bit untruthful. I understand that you read it and it's reported to you, but I don't think that it is at all reflective of the state of mind here. Miaba? Okay, Ahmed Yadak. Ahmed Yadak.
Hello, Jonathan. Thank you so much
Yes,
for.
hello.
Hello, Shabbat Shalom. Uh,
Shabbat shalom.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Actually, I would like to ask if it could be useful that the IDF maybe cooperate with the Egyptian army because in the past few years, Egypt actually has struggled with the tunnels because the terrorists of Hamas has used the tunnels network in order to smuggle militants to the Egyptian territories. So actually, we here have a very good experience in counterterrorism. Do you think it could be useful in this issue?
Yeah, thank you, Ahmed. My neighbor, I suppose. I'm sure you are Egyptian, and all the best to you and to Egypt. That, of course, there is many positive things that are happening between Israel and Egypt in countering terrorism, extremism, and the violent Islamism against Egyptian security and against Israeli security. I think there is a lot more that can be done, and Israel is very open to it, and I think welcomes cooperation with the Egyptian authorities. We are happy with the role that Egypt is playing now. We're happy and thankful for that Egypt is helping Palestinians with humanitarian aid and part of the negotiations. Maybe there are more things that Egypt can do in order to alleviate the situation, but in general, I think that there is cooperation that is very important, and there's definitely room to do more. And I think that Israel is very open for that type of cooperation, which I'm sure would be mutually beneficial for Israel and Egypt and would have a good effect on the region. So thank you. Um, let's do two last questions because we're nearing an hour. Um, yeah, Bradley Martin, let's try you again. We are persistent. We don't want to leave anybody behind. If not Bradley, then MJK, be ready, please. Okay, who do we have? MJK is connecting. MJK, you should be good to go. Just unmute and start speaking.
Uh, Thank you very much. My
Thank you.
question is regarding the Curie, the bombing, and what we see on ground is bombing on the buildings. How do you ensure your hostages, safety of the hostages while bombing these buildings?
Thank you for the question. That is, it's very important. We know that Hamas uses their own civilians as human shields, and we assess that they also try to use our hostages as human shields to protect their seniors and the most important assets. And I cannot go into too much detail. I can say that before we strike any asset, a civilian building that Hamas uses for military purposes or anything else, there's a procedure where we try to make sure that there are no civilians in it, using various technological tools that we have at our disposal. So that is something that is a practice we have, and of course we focus a lot of our intelligence sensors to try to understand where our hostages are being kept. The working assumption is that most of the hostages were and are held underground and not above ground, but we've seen instances, it's been reported in Israeli media. I cannot yet confirm it as an IDF spokesperson, but it's been reported in Israeli media that at least one of the hostages was kept in a civilian Palestinian house that was owned by an UNRWA teacher. Again, this is unconfirmed by IDF, but the hostages themselves testified to this, and it's been reported in Israeli media. So there are various cases, but at the end of the day, before we strike, we do a lot of checks in order to make sure that there are no civilians in it, and definitely not our hostages. And at the end of the day, we want to get all our hostages back. Pierce, I think, has been requesting for a long time. Pierce, if you want to go ahead. ניסיתי. So Pierce is connecting. Okay, Pierce is connecting. We'll get his question soon.
In obscuring your message. By the way, you've been doing a great job. And I would just like to make a suggestion, which is that you reach out to podcasts, especially Joe Rogan, because his reach is about 10 times the reach of the broadcast media. And you would be able to discuss with him for like 3 hours. Whereas when you go on one of these news shows, you get kind of 6 seconds to say something. And you wouldn't have to polish everything down to like this little diamond nugget of truth. And you could go in depth. And after Joe Rogan, I would also like you to do a podcast with Jocko Willenick. He is an ex-Navy SEAL, and he would ask you really, really good questions as opposed to the stupid questions that you get on the broadcast media. Are you willing to do that?
Okay. Thank you, Pierce. Yeah, I'm all for it. I could fly out to, I suppose Rogan is in LA, I think, right? If I'm not mistaken.
He's in Austin, Texas, and you could have.
Oh, he's in Austin, Texas. Okay.
Yeah, and you could have
even better.
BB reach out to Elon to reach out to Joe.
Yeah, all for that, and I agree. It's tremendous reach and tremendous influence. So I thank you for it. And some we have actually reached out to, and we'll do it again in order to get on. There's a very talented Israeli civilian spokesperson, Eilon Levy, was with another very big YouTube persona, Piers Morgan, and had a good interview there. So Israel is definitely reaching out both on the military level and on the civilian level.
Yeah, and all your long forms have been great.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, so we can end with Jaco L. I think a Spanish speaker. Jaco, עשית אותו?
Hi, Jonathan. Shabbat Shalom from Lima, Peru.
Hello,
I wanted to ask you, the war is not only a military war, it's a media war, a financial war. How and the impact of in the Israeli economy of the war, how is the army managing this impact? And at what point Iran is going to pay for the bill?
That's a good question. What the Israeli government is doing, which is the entity that, of course, controls budget and sets national priorities in the allocation of funds, is reorganizing the Israeli budget and some parts of the national economy in order to be able to sustain the war effort. That is being done as we speak. Fortunately, Israel has a very strong workforce who pay a lot of taxes. I know that myself. And Israel has the ability to adjust and set its priorities in order to sustain the war. Hopefully, we will be able to do a swift and decisive maneuver that will achieve our aims to get rid of Hamas, restore safety and security, and get our hostages back. And hopefully, we can do that with minimal civilian casualties in Gaza, and most importantly for us, minimal casualties for our troops. And achieve that as quickly as possible so that there won't be an enduring effect on our economy. Even if there will be one, we will, I think, have shown in the past, Israel, the Israeli workforce and Israeli governments have shown in the past, and civil society, high tech, and ingenuity, all of that, we've shown quite strong resilience and creativity to work and fight our way out of adversity. And I am very confident, even though I know little of economy, that we will do the same thing again. But we definitely want to focus the war and keep it as short as possible. We have many reservists who are not working and they're fighting now, and that has an effect on the on the national monetary situation. I thank you all for being on the call. I hope this was informative for
¿Tú crees
most
que
of
mi
you.
pregunta ha sido
And I thank you for taking your time. We will do this again. There's a quiet time between legacy media interviews, referencing the remark before. And I'm all for questions from people who are more positive towards Israel and support us, and people who have different points of view. And I think that's important to listen to as well and answer. And that is, I hope that has been reflected in the people that have been able to talk here. So I wish you all the best. Thank you for being here. And well, stay tuned for the next update. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.